keep your voice low, if you can. No, no, not because they'll actually hear us. At this hour, even the guards are more interested in keeping their eyes open than in listening at library doors. But shadows have long memories in this place, and some habits, like whispering, are hard to set down. Come in, watch your step. The stones here have been waiting a very long time. You've made it through another day of noise and demands. In here, for a little while, all of that can stay on the other side of the door. All you have to do is listen to the rain, to the turning of old pages, to an old man's voice that has spent too many years arguing with history. Take a slow breath in, quietly. Let your shoulders drop a fraction. Good. We're quite alone. Just you and shelves that no one remembers to be afraid of anymore. You know who I am in the way that matters. I'm Alastair, the one who knows where things are that were meant to be lost. I've watched history being written in fresh, dark ink, and I've watched other hands come after crossing out lines, tearing out pages, pretending the first version was never there. They are very fond, these royal people, of the phrase, "it never happened." The trick you see is that here, in the quiet stacks and the locked rooms, we keep little notes that say otherwise. Tonight, I want to show you one of those notes. Not a letter, not a confession, nothing so dramatic. Just a line in a catalogue, an entry for a painting that once hung in the king's own halls. A portrait of a queen, and beside her name, in a hand that is not the original, one neat, merciless sentence. All likenesses to be taken down. By royal command, 1536. Here, come closer to the lamp. Do you see this book? It doesn't look important, does it? No jewels on the cover, no gilded clasps, just leather darkened by hands long gone, and corners softened by use. It's only a list, really, an inventory of what once hung on palace walls. Who painted it, where it was placed, how much was paid, and sometimes what became of it. Look here, on this page. You see the heading? Portraits in the Great Gallery of Whitehall in the reign of King Henry VIII. Underneath, the names march down in columns. His Majesty in armor. His Majesty with the Prince, Queen Catherine, First Consort. Prince Edward in swaddling bands. And then, there, Queen Anne, consort to His Majesty, painted in full state. No surname needed, no explanation. At the time this line was written, everyone knew which Anne this meant. Anne Boleyn, the woman for whom a kingdom changed its church. The woman whose falcon badge once glimmered on the very ceiling of the king's chamber, and whose initials were twined with his own H and A, cut into stone, painted on glass, carved into wood. Now, look at the ink beside her name, not the brown, faded script of the original clerk, who simply noted that the Queen's portrait hung proudly on the south wall. I mean this darker line here, squeezed into the margin, written by a different hand years later. All likenesses of the late Queen Anne are to be removed from royal houses. By command, in the year of our Lord, 1536. No flourish, no explanation, just a sentence that does not even call her queen without the little word late to cut her down to size. You know, of course, what else happened in that year? Trials, accusations, a scaffold built within sight of the tower, headsman's work. But here, in these pages, you can see another kind of execution, quieter, paper thin, done with ink instead of iron. On the palace walls, the order went out, her emblems to be scraped away, her cipher to be chiseled off, her falcon to be taken down from the painted beams. In this book, the same thing happened in miniature. Her presence on the wall reduced to a line, and that line half erased by a clerk doing his duty. For a queen, death comes twice. Once when the sword falls, and once when her face disappears from the places where people are allowed to look up. You've seen what it looks like when a queen's name is pushed into the margins, a single line crossed out, a cold instruction to take her down. Pieces of ink, flattened, quiet. But that is not how she felt when she was alive and favored. A catalog entry can't show you. The way the palace once carried her like a tune, you couldn't stop humming. We'll go back now, if you're willing. Not in your body. That can stay where it is settled, comfortable, growing heavier by degrees. Let your thoughts step backward instead, through the years, through the edits, past the men with brushes and chisels, until the paint is fresh again and the plaster still smells slightly of lime. We're walking into a time when Anne Boleyn was not a danger, but a declaration. Picture yourself standing at one end of the great gallery at Whitehall. The air is a little cooler here, the kind of cool that comes from long walls and high ceilings, from stone and timber that never quite forget the last winter. The floor is wooden boards running in long lines beneath your feet, polished by decades of careful shoes. If you start walking, your steps echo back to you, just enough to remind you how big the room is. Light falls in soft rectangles from tall, mullioned windows looking out to the river, where barges move like slow thoughts. On the walls, dark paneling rises to meet painted plaster, and everywhere, her presence has been worked in. Look up. On the beams that cross the ceiling, you see the white falcon, Anne's bird, standing proud on a dead tree stump. Only the stump is not dead anymore. It bursts into red and white roses, the colors of the Tudor line, as if her coming had coaxed new life out of old wood. Between the beams, in little painted shields, letters intertwine, H and A, over and over, twisted into knots, woven into borders, until they stop being just initials and become part of the pattern of the building itself. Walk a little farther. Let your fingers trail lightly along the wood. Here, just at hand height, you feel where a carver's chisel cut those letters into the paneling, deep enough to last a lifetime, or so he thought. On your left, a narrow side corridor opens away from the main hall. It smells slightly different. Less of beeswax and river, more of wool and dye. If you peep in, you'll see tapestries hung to keep out the draughts, threads worked into hunting scenes, saints, strange beasts. Look closely at the borders. Among the vines and flowers, there, again, is her falcon smaller here, tucked in like a secret. Her badge, woven into the fabric of stories, far older than she is. Back in the main gallery, pause by one of the windows. Colored glass catches the daylight, splitting it into reds, golds, clear white. In the lidded pattern, you can just make out a crowned H and a crowned A, facing each other, a Tudor rose between them, as if the sun itself were being asked to shine through their marriage. When the king decided that Anne was his future, he did not whisper it. He had it carved into beams, painted into ceilings, set in glass, so that light could not enter a room without passing through her cipher. Now, let's stop walking. There, between two windows, hung just high enough that you must lift your chin to meet her eyes, is the portrait the catalog called Queen Anne, in full state. We no longer have this exact canvas, not in any room you can visit. But the records of other paintings, the surviving types, let us sketch it in our minds. A three-quarter pose. Her body turned slightly, her head facing you. A French hood frames her hair, dark against the pale linen at her throat. Pearls edge the hood, marching in a neat line, like small moons caught in black velvet. Around her neck, a chain pearls again, and that bead pendant with its 3 dangling drops, each one a point of soft light against the rich fabric of her gown. Her hands rest one upon the other, fingers long, ringed, holding nothing, because even empty hands were expected to say, "I am calm, I am harmless, I belong here." In life, the stories say, Anne's laughter rose quickly, her temper just as fast. She argued theology with bishops, matched the king quip for quip, and did not always remember to soften her edges for the comfort of men who preferred their queens gentle. Her ladies would later tell tales of evenings in her chamber music, card games, her sharp eyes missing nothing, her sharp tongue occasionally too honest for her own safety. None of that is allowed into the paint. On the wall, she is serenity in state. Yet, look long enough, and you might imagine a trace of something else at the corner of her mouth, in the set of her gaze, a hint that this is a woman who knows exactly how precarious her position is and intends, for as long as she can, to use it. Early each morning, before the courtiers flood the gallery, a young maid comes with a cloth and a small brush. She dusts the frame carefully, never touching the paint. She is not supposed to look long into the face before her, but she steals a quick glance anyway. To her, this queen does not look like the saints in the chapel, all blank sweetness and resignation. There is something alert here, something that makes the maid stand a little straighter as she works, as if a small piece of that sharpness might rub off on her fingers. Later in the day, foreign ambassadors are led down this hall, their boots clicking softly on the floor. They pause before the painting. They see what they have been told to see, a rightful queen, crowned, bejeweled, firmly installed at the king's side. In their private letters, they will write more sharply about rumors, about miscarriages, about factions at court, but in the gallery, under her watchful eyes, they bow and say only, "Her Grace is most gracious." For now, this is enough. Her falcon still spreads its wings on the ceiling. Her initials still bloom in glass and wood. Her portrait still holds its place between the windows, singing the same message to everyone who walks past. She is the future. The world will adjust to fit. We know how quickly that song will change. But for the sake of your breathing, for the heaviness that is beginning to gather in your limbs, let us linger a little longer in this moment, when her face is everywhere, and no one has yet dared to imagine the wall without her. You remember how it looked when her initials were still blooming on the beams, when her falcon still watched from the painted sky. Now we come to the year when someone decided all of that should have been a mistake. The year Anne Boleyn ceased to be queen in the eyes of the law, and, if the king had his way, in the eyes of memory as well. You know the broad strokes. Accusations of treason, of lovers, of unspeakable acts hurried through in a matter of days. A trial that was never going to end any other way. A sword brought from France to do a very final piece of work. But tonight, we will not stand in the crowd at the scaffold. We will stand instead in the places where decorators and carpenters worked, in the echoing halls and quiet chapels where a different kind of sentence was carried out. The king did not wait long. On the very day of her execution, an ambassador wrote home that Henry has already caused her badges and arms to be taken down and effaced in all the places where they were. Effaced, not simply removed, but scraped, chiseled, hacked out. In the palaces, that word became a sound, the tap of iron against stone, the rough scrape of tools across paint, the soft fall of plaster dust onto floors that had only just stopped echoing with her name. At Hampton Court and Whitehall, masons and painters hauled ladders back into rooms where they'd only recently finished their work. They looked up at the beams where Anne's white falcon stood on its blooming stump, crowned, scepter in claw, with her A and the king's H entwined beneath its feet. Now, those same hands were told to make it, as if she had never been there. Some falcons were painted over their white bodies, dulled under coats of darker color, their roses muted until they looked like any other generic flourish. Others were chiseled out, the carving cut down to bare wood, ready to receive new creatures, Jane Seymour's phoenix, or panther symbols chosen to say, "This is the wife who matters now." And the letters, those endless H and A's, looped through ceilings and archways, were not spared. Where the carving was shallow, a careful painter might turn one curl into another, adding a stroke here, shortening a tail there, until R could be read as HS instead. The same knot now standing for Henry and Seymour. The previous queen replaced with a flick of a wrist. In other places, the A was simply chipped away, leaving scars in the wood that no amount of paint could fully hide. If you visit Hampton Court today, guides will point out a few H and A's that somehow escaped the purge, still peering down from a gateway ceiling, like ghosts of a marriage the king later insisted had never truly existed. Not all the work was as dramatic as smashing stone. Some of it was as simple and as cruel as redecorating. In one corridor, tapestries bearing her badge were taken down, rolled up tight, their bright threads hidden in the dark of a storeroom, or fed quietly to moths and damp. New scenes went up in their place, safer saints, mythic stories, with no inconvenient falcon tucked in the border. In the chapel at Hampton Court, a window showing St. Anne was quietly removed, its association with the fallen queen suddenly too pointed to allow. In its stead, glass that would not remind anyone of the wrong woman at the altar beside the king. Servants watched all this with the careful blankness of people who understand very well that their faces are not supposed to show what their minds are thinking. They helped carry bolts of fabric, held ladders, fetches of paint, and did their best to make their hands seem as neutral as the walls they were altering. And then there were the days when it was time for the portraits themselves. Henry did not wish to see the face of the woman he had just declared never truly his wife. Ambassadors later puzzled over how so few likenesses of such a notorious queen could survive from an age that loved nothing more than painting its rulers. It was not an accident. Imagine again that long gallery at Whitehall, but now there is no music, no knots of courtiers lingering to gossip, just the light fading towards evening, and a hush that feels almost like a held breath. Down the center of the hall, two servants walk slowly, a great frame held carefully between them. It is her portrait, Queen Anne, in full state. The canvas tilts slightly with each step, the varnish catching the last light so that her eyes seem almost to move, as if she were watching this final journey from her place in paint. They have been told not to linger on her face, so they let their gaze slide to the edge of the frame, to the floorboards beneath their boots, to the list held loosely in the steward's hand at the far end of the room. That list already bears a line through her name. portrait of the late Queen Anne, to be removed from the gallery. What happens next depends on who tells the story. Some say the paintings were stored in back rooms until damp and neglect did what flames had not. Others are certain most were burned too dangerous to keep, a needless risk to any household that wanted to stay in favor. In either case, from the point of view of anyone who still walked those halls, she was gone. The next time the gallery was prepared for a celebration, another woman's face might look down from that space on the wall, or perhaps no human face at all, just a tapestry full of obedient saints with eyes that had never argued with a king. Back here, in the quiet, all of that noise, the chisels, the ladders, the soft grunt of men lifting heavy frames is shrunk down to a sentence in a book, her badges and arms taken down and effaced in all places where they were. Likenesses removed by command. No mention of the dust in the air or the faint feeling in a few unguarded hearts that something unnatural was happening, that history was being tugged out of shape by a hand too powerful to resist. As one historian has pointed out, a queen's place in history is usually secured by many anchors. Her heraldry, her portraits, her badges in palaces, her household records, her legal marriage, her tomb and epitaph. In May 1536, Anne Boleyn lost every one of those at once. Marriage annulled, household dissolved, heraldry effaced, portraits destroyed or hidden, burial in an unmarked grave in the Tower Chapel. It was not a normal tidying up after a fallen queen. It was an attempt to make it look as though she had never truly been there at all. And yet, erasure is almost never complete. A falcon badge, once bright above the hall of Hampton Court, vanished after her fall, only to reappear centuries later in an antique dealer's shop, black with soot, its carving still crisp beneath the dirt. Cleaned, its white bird, its roses, its entwined initials told their story again, and the badge found its way back to the palace it had been meant to adorn. A few H and A's survived in hidden corners of Hampton Court's gateway, overlooked in the rush to change them all, so that visitors today can still crane their necks and see in the ceiling proof that even a king could not catch everything. In the next chapter, we will follow another trail, the ink and paper path of a portrait that slipped out of the royal grasp and into the walls of another man's house. For now, let your thoughts rest a moment on the idea that even the most determined attempt to rewrite a life cannot find every falcon, every initial, every quiet record left in a clerk's tired hand. We have walked through halls and chapels, listened to chisels and the soft grunt of men lifting frames. That is one way to follow a life by the marks it leaves on stone and wood. But there is another trail, quieter, made of ink and habit, of clerks doing their jobs with no idea that centuries later someone would lean over their shoulder to see what they wrote. Come, sit here beside the lamp. You don't have to read. Your eyes have done enough for today. Let them drift, if they like. I'll be the one to turn pages. You can simply listen to the small sounds of paper and leather, and let the story unfold itself in your mind. We are leaving the king's house now, and entering someone else's, a man who collected pictures not as propaganda, but as companions. His name was John, Baron Lumley. He never met Anne Boleyn, but he knew her story, and, more importantly, he owned her face. Lumley lived in a world where walls spoke. His houses on Tower Hill, at Nonsuch, at Lumley Castle, were lined with portraits, 196 of them at least, according to the inventories taken in his time. Kings and queens, counselors, ladies, saints and scholars, faces arranged so that anyone walking his halls could see, in oil and chalk, the web of people who made his age. In 1590, someone, a clerk with careful handwriting and perhaps sore fingers, wrote down what he owned. Room by room, frame by frame, they recorded who hung where. Hear, listen, item. In the great chamber, a full-length portrait of Queen Anne Boleyn. Not just a lady, not a supposed queen, not unknown, full-length. Queen Anne Boleyn. The description is brief. Inventory books are not given to poetry, but it tells us more than you might think. Full-length means we are not dealing with a small likeness tucked into a corner, but with a painting large enough to command a room, to show the fall of her gown, the placing of her feet, the way she occupied space. Some researchers have traced how that portrait might have traveled before it reached Lumley's wall, perhaps painted. For her family, hung at Hever Castle, her childhood home, protected by those who still loved her, even when the court did not. After her death, so the theory goes, it may have passed into the hands of Henry's later wife, Anne of Cleves, then to her friend, the Earl of Arundel, and from him to Lumley, his son-in-law, each new owner valuing the image for their own reasons. The details of that journey are argued over in study rooms far from here. For tonight, it is enough to sit with the fact that 54 years after her death, a man stood in his great chamber, looked at a life-sized Anne Boleyn, and thought, of course she must be listed. She belongs on the record. For a while, her trail in ink is as straight as a corridor. The 1590 inventory names her. Later documents still speak of the same picture, the full-length Anne Boleyn, sometimes noting where in the house she hangs, which other faces keep her company. Then, as the decades turn, Lumley dies. His grand collection, the largest in Elizabethan England, begins to loosen. Some portraits go back into royal hands. Others pass through inheritance, gathering new labels or losing old ones. In the next century, there is talk of a fire flames in one of the inns of court, where law and politics rub shoulders. Heat, smoke, confusion. According to later notes, The full-length Anne Boleyn was damaged there, scarred enough that someone took a knife and cut the painting down, removing the lower half, turning a standing queen into a head and shoulders panel. By 1773, a sale catalogue lists her again, Lot 33, a portrait of Queen Anne Boleyn from the Lumley collection, formerly full length, now cut, damaged by fire when in the temple. Even here, after so much bad luck, her identity is still clear enough to print. Then, once more, the trail dips. The buyer's name is there, but the painting passes into private hands. A new wall, a new house, perhaps a new brass plaque beneath the frame. And somewhere between that sale and today, the canvas goes quiet. No more clear mentions, just theories and a few old photographs of portraits that no longer seem to exist. If you spend enough afternoons in old houses, you begin to recognize a certain pattern. There will be a great hall with the famous faces, kings, generals, ancestors, everyone remembers to mention. And then, up a side stair, down a quieter corridor, there is often a smaller picture, a woman in Tudor dress, her colors muted by time, her features softened by varnish and dust. In one house, she hangs halfway up the stairs so that anyone going up or down must pass within arm's length of her gaze. The guide, if you ask, shrugs a little. Traditionally said to be Anne Boleyn, they might say, with the careful tone of someone who has repeated the same phrase to 11 school groups and 2 historians this week. In another place, a council chamber in a small town, a portrait of an unknown lady looks down on modern arguments about roads and budgets. The people who commissioned it are long gone. The name on the original frame may have been replaced or simply worn away. All that is left is a bee at her throat, or the shape of her hood, or a sideways resemblance to copies we think we know. Scholars argue, of course. They line up the candidates, the NPG 668 type, the Hever Rose portrait, the Hoskins miniature, the so-called Lyndhurst panel, and compare noses, chins, the set of the eyes. They weigh the evidence. Medals from 1534, chalk drawings attributed to Holbein, descriptions by Venetian ambassadors who wrote of dark eyes, a long oval face, a full, wide mouth. They debate whether the Lumley portrait might survive in altered form, cut down, relabeled, hiding in plain sight behind a name it was never meant to wear. From your bed, none of this needs to keep you awake. It is enough to imagine that somewhere in a quiet corner of some building, a woman's painted eyes still look out at a world that cannot quite agree on who she is. Here, in this pool of lamplight, we can do something the arguments seldom allow. We can stop asking which portrait is the most correct, and instead sit with the fact that so many people have tried to see her at all. In 1590, a clerk inked the words "Full-length Queen Anne Boleyn" into an inventory, probably without thinking very much about it. In 1773, Another hand copied her name into a sale catalog, adding notes about fire and cutting down, still certain enough to tie this damaged panel to the memory of the woman it showed. In the centuries since, historians, novelists, artists have leaned close to images, have traced the curve of her jaw on a screen, have argued late into the night about which version of that face comes closest to the truth. For someone a king tried so hard to erase, that is a surprising amount of attention. Erasure, after all, is supposed to end a story. Instead, in Anne's case, it has kept questions alive. Who was she really? What did she truly look like? What did the people who loved her see, standing in front of that lost full-length portrait in some long-vanished great chamber? Tonight, you do not need the answers. You only need to know that the attempt to make her disappear never quite succeeded. Her name is still there, in lists and wills, in captions and arguments, and perhaps in a painting that hangs in a quiet room you have not yet walked through. Let that be enough for one night. Close the inventory in your mind, hear the soft thud of leather meeting wood, and feel your own thoughts begin to stack themselves away, like papers tidied at the end of a long day. The shelves, the portraits, the debates can stand where they are without you for a while. You are allowed to turn off the little light that keeps asking, what is the true face? What is the full story? And simply rest in the knowledge that she was here, that someone once wrote it down, and that you have listened long enough for one evening. We've traced Anne Boleyn from ceiling beams to sale catalogs, from painted falcons to mislabeled frames, from the order to efface her to the little places where the erasure slipped. She is one story among many. For every Anne whose name still stirs debate, there are hundreds of women whose portraits were never painted, whose words were never copied, whose work went under someone else's signature. Historians have a term for it, erasure, the slow wearing away of women from the record. If that thought makes something in you tighten, that is understandable. It is heavy, this knowledge that entire lives can be pushed to the edge of the page. But heavy thoughts do not have to be held all at once. Tonight is not an exam. You are not required to solve the whole of history before you sleep. There is a kind of anger that comes with learning how often women's stories have been cut away, their discoveries published under other names, their letters destroyed, their images relabeled or removed. It is a reasonable anger. People have written whole books from that fire, have marched, taught, argued, rewritten syllabuses, built new shelves, just for the ones who are left out. If this were midday, if you were sitting upright at a desk, we might fan those embers, trace the lines from Anne's. Anished falcons to other women whose work was folded quietly into the achievements of men. But you are lying down. Your spine deserves a gentler story. There will be mornings for rage, afternoons for research, conversations and choices that move the world a little. At a time, this hour, is for putting things down. So, let's do something simple and quietly disobedient. In your mind, build a wall, nothing grand. It might be the plaster of a cottage stair, cool and uneven under your palm, or the dark wood of a paneled room, smooth with age, smelling faintly of wax and dust. On that wall, hang a frame. Inside it, place Anne, not as a king wanted her, or as an ambassador described her, but as you choose to remember her. From tonight, perhaps she wears the French hood, pearls at the edge, the bee necklace at her throat. Perhaps you soften her expression a little, or sharpen it, let her smile reach her eyes, or keep her mouth set in that thoughtful line you've come to know over these chapters. The point is not accuracy. The point is that, on this wall, no one will come with a ladder and a tool to take her down. If you like, you can give her company. Around her, you might imagine other women you suspect should have had their portraits painted but did not. The aunt whose stories never made it into family albums. The teacher who changed your ideas, but whose name will never appear in textbooks. The friend who held you together through a hard season without any statue or title to say so. You don't even have to see their faces clearly. Just knowing they're there, sharing the wall, is enough. In this room, in this one place inside you, no one is trying to edit them out. Now, turn a little inward. You have your own walls too, not of stone, not of oak, but of habit and expectation. On those walls, you may have hung many versions of yourself for others to look at. The reliable one, the capable one, the agreeable one, the one who never needs help, the one who always explains, always smooths, always steps into the empty space no one else is filling. Some days, those portraits feel like armor, helping you move through rooms that were not built with you in mind. Other days, they feel like paintings hung too high, impossible to live up to, and exhausting to hold. Here, in this quiet library, where even queens are allowed to be complicated, you do not need to stand in front of your own framed image and prove anything. There is no court here, no audience to applaud or condemn, just shelves and rain and one very patient lamp. If it feels safe, you can imagine taking one of those portraits down. Choose whichever comes easiest, the always fine you, the never tired you, the never angry you. Picture yourself lifting that frame gently off its hook, feeling its weight in your hands. Then just for tonight, lean it facing against the wall or lay it carefully on the floor. It's not destroyed. You can hang it back up tomorrow if you really need to. But for this night, you do not have to be on display. Now, let's turn from portraits to the person who has been listening to all of this. The you who is not on any wall, but is lying here right now. If you're willing, you can let your attention move slowly through your body, the way a lantern might move along a shelf, touching one book at a time. Start at the top of your head. Notice your scalp, your forehead, the small muscles around your eyes. They have done a great deal of looking today at screens, at people, at tasks, at worries you couldn't solve in a single sitting. Let them soften, as if someone had gently smoothed a hand over your brow. Let your awareness move down to your cheeks, your jaw, the space between your teeth. If there is any tension there, you don't need to pry it open. Just notice it and see if it is willing to loosen a little now that no one is asking you to speak or smile or explain. Your tongue can rest against the floor of your mouth. Your lips can fall into whatever shape is most natural when you're not on. Let that soft attention slide down the column of your neck into your shoulders. These are the parts that so often hunch, trying, without being asked, to carry more than they should. See if you can imagine them widening a fraction, as if some invisible cloak had slipped from them and fallen to the floor. From your shoulders, let awareness move into your arms, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers. Notice where they rest on blanket, on sheet, on your own body. If your hands are clenched, you might let them uncurl, just enough to feel the coolness of the air between your fingers. These hands do so much each day. Typing, lifting, cooking, comforting. For the next few breaths, they don't need to do anything at all. Bring your attention to your chest, the gentle rise and fall as you breathe. You don't need to change the rhythm. Just feel it in and out, like a tide that knows its own timing. If there is any tightness there, let the breath move around it, like water around a stone, without trying to push it away. Now, let your awareness drift down to your back, upper back, between the shoulders, middle back, lower back. Notice where it meets the bed, where the mattress is quietly holding you up. If there is any place trying to hover, see if you can let it sink a little more, trusting that you will not fall through. The floor, the beams, the very ground beneath this building are all quite content to lend you their strength for a while. Let your attention travel further down through your hips, into your thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet. Notice the weight of your legs, how they rest on the bed or against each other. If there is any urge to hold them tensed, to be ready to stand, to run, you can remind them softly, like talking to an over-dutiful friend. Not now. Now is for lying still. Even your toes can have their small share of rest. Notice them tucked away in socks or bare to the cool air. Let them spread or curl in whatever way feels most at ease, knowing that no one is asking them to carry you anywhere. Until morning. Every story about this palace could go on. For volumes, more kings, more queens, more attempts to control how they are. Remembered, this one does not need to. Sleep stories are allowed to end, after you have gone. Nothing here will be lost if you miss the last sentence. In fact, that is the intended ending for you to drift away somewhere between this breath and the next, while the rain keeps talking softly to the windows. If other thoughts try to crowd in lists, worries, snatches of conversation, treat them gently, the way you might treat noisy visitors in a library. A small smile, a finger to your lips. Not now. People are resting. Then let them turn and walk back down the aisles of your mind, their footsteps fading into the distance. You do not need to follow. Now, imagine that this room, with its shelves and its lamp, is one chamber in a larger house. In the next room over, the story can go on. Voices discussing portraits, pages being turned, questions about who was forgotten and why. The door between is mostly closed. You hear only a murmur, the way you might hear someone talking downstairs while you are already in bed. Here, in your own small space, there is just the sound of the rain, steady and patient, and the quiet weight of your body, held by whatever you're lying on. If your mind needs something to rest on, it can simply follow the soft rhythm of your breathing in and out, like the rise and fall of a curtain in a draught, like pages lifting and settling in a breeze. Soon, even that watching can grow dim. There is nothing you must remember perfectly. No test in the morning on Tudor history, no requirement to hold on to every detail. You have heard enough. You have done enough. For tonight, you are enough.